Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of Let's Max Warframe. Today we're going to be taking a look at a weapon I've loved for a long time, despite the fact that it really needs a bit of a buff, which is the Supra, and taking a look at the new mod for the Supra, Entropy Burst. Now I've not done a weapon review for the Supra, mostly because my Let's Mod series is for weapons without Forma, and the Supra is one of my oldest and first largely formed weapon that I built. Let's just have a quick look at some of the Supra's features before we look at the new mod for it. Now the Supra is a corpus heavy machine gun that can be acquired through clan research and comes with a mastery requirement of 7, top highest in the game, equal with the Lanka. So what do you actually get for that large mastery requirement? You get a base damage of 35, with the majority of it coming in the form of puncture, a very nice fire rate, a large magazine size and a pretty decent spool up time, noticeably quicker than the Grineer equivalent, the Gorgon. Now it doesn't come without downsides though. It's horrendously inaccurate, especially when you add heavy caliber. The flight time on the projectiles is so slow it takes a long time to get used to. The ammo consumption is incredibly bad. It has basically no crit chance, no status chance, and a reload of 4.2 seconds, which is the longest of any weapon in the game. Now this isn't sounding good for the Supra, is it? But none of these downsides are enough to ruin the Supra for me, and once I've shown the build I use, I explain why this is one of my favourite weapons in the game. So now that's out of the way, let's take a look at the new mod for the Supra, Entropy Burst. This mod can be bought from the Syndicate store from Cephalon Suda for 25,000 reputation points after gaining the rank of Wise with them. Now let's start by looking at the entropy part of the mod, which requires a meter to be filled by the gaining of 2,000 affinity, either directly or passively. When it reaches full charge, it will release a wave of energy, dealing 1,000 magnetic damage to all units around the player. Plus it restores 25% of the player's energy, and temporarily boosts the player's base energy by 25%. Now, if I'm honest, I'm not a fan of entropy on the Supra for one very good reason. It's pretty much an entirely puncture-based weapon. Shielded units like the majority of the corpus take between 25 and 50% less damage from the puncture damage of the weapon, meaning that it's a pretty large drop in the damage of the Supra. In addition to this, the magnetic proc from Entropy is completely useless against mid to high level Grineer, since they don't have shields and take a massively reduced amount of damage from that magnetic damage. So in essence, the Supra is a Grineer killer with an AoE proc designed to kill corpus. It just doesn't really fit. Now it could be argued this is an attempt to balance things out so it's good against both, but the damage lost because of that corpus resistance to puncture far outweighs the bonus you get from that magnetic AoE. Now there's another point I've not touched on with this mod, which is that plus 20 base status that the Entropy Burst adds to the weapon. Now I actually think this is quite a good idea. Having the Supra as a status spamming weapon would really be able to help fix a lot of the problems that it currently has. With it having the ability to spread status procs around, it could really fulfill the role of the support weapon it's always struggled to fill. However, the mod I feel is not currently working as intended, and I'm going to show you that in a second. Okay, so let's move on to starting to mod the Supra. Now the Supra as standard does not come with any Forma, so you need to add a few through Forma. Now the way I've gone is I've gone 4 Vs and a dash, which I find to be the optimal way to bring the mod costs down to a point where you can get a really good build on this. Now what we were talking about earlier with the Entropy Burst mod is that it doesn't apply the status properly, and I can show that very easily in the mod screen now. If you add Entropy Burst into, it adds that 20 base status there. As you can see, it goes from 2.5 to 22.5. However, if you put high voltage on there, it only takes it to 24%. Malignant force, it only brings it to 22.5%. So what it appears to be doing is that it adds the status, or the 20 to the base status, but the mods like high voltage and malignant force only add that 60% of the base status of the 2.5%, rather on the 22.5%. which I'm not sure whether that's working correctly. That might be a bug currently in the game, but it does need to be looked at, because currently Entropy Burst, because of that, really isn't actually worth putting on the weapon. Now the way I would mod it is, if we go here to our Grineer build, we'll go with Serration, Split Chamber, Heavy Caliber and Shred. That really helps with the spool up time of the weapon. Plus that punch through is really nice and helps increase the damage of the weapon. And we're going to go with fast hands because a 4.2 second reload down to 3.2 is definitely needed on this weapon. And ammo mutation, as you can see in the footage, I mean, that ammo mutation really is needed on this weapon because you run out of ammo so quickly with this thing. And then because we're not going with the status build because of Entropy Burst, we're going to go with Hellfire and Stormbringer to bring up radiation damage against those Grineer units. Now having a look at the Corpus, we've got the same build again, but we're going to go with Stormbringer and Cryo rounds to bring up that the magnetic damage against the Corpus shielded units. Although I wouldn't recommend really taking the Supra against the Corpus because of that very high puncture damage. It really does nothing against the Corpus. This isn't a Corpus killer, it's designed for killing Grineer in reality. So we're going to just mod this for the Void, and what we're going to do is we'll change out Cryo rounds for Infected Clip, and that will bring up corrosive damage, which is best against those units in the Void. Okay, and now on to my thoughts on Entropy Burst and the Supra in general. The Supra is a good damage dealer, and if you get seriously close to enemy units, it can be pretty devastating. Combining the Supra with Mirage is always a lot of fun in Tower 4 defense, for example, but this doesn't make it a great weapon. The way that I use the Supra is to combine it with that heavy caliber to put up a wall of bullets, especially when dealing with large groups of enemies. However, this is neither ammo efficient nor something you can do more effectively with another weapon. The Gorgon, for example, does this much better than the Supra, since you can control to some extent where the rounds go. Plus it's not hit so hard by heavy caliber, and as such the ammo efficiency is a ton better than the Supra. Now don't get me wrong, the Supra is massively fun to use, but it's a long way from being near the top in terms of the best weapons, despite being the top in terms of mastery requirement. Entropy Burst is a step in the right direction, however it's not quite there yet. Because of that, another giant problem with the Supra. What with the spool up time kind of really requiring that shred mod, the reload requiring fast hands, and the ammo inefficiency requiring ammo mutation, what would you lose to put the syndicate mod on the weapon? If it was anything, I would lose the ammo mutation like I do in the footage in the background. However, this isn't a viable option on mid to long run missions, because you're going to be sat on an ammo box for the entire time, costing a fortune in materials and credits just to run the weapon. And there we run into the main problem with the Supra. With the fact that it's got so many problems, it requires so many what I call support mods to be able to compete for kills with more accurate faster firing hit scan weapons like the Soma, or faster flight time weapons like the Bolter Prime. It just gets left behind in terms of damage because you simply run out of mod space. For the damage mods, you can't do any dual elemental builds here, and it falls so far behind because of that. But the one thing it is on top of the pack for, compared to the Soma or the Bolter Prime, is for fun. Because who doesn't like seeing a light show? As always guys, many thanks for watching. Please don't forget to leave a like and to subscribe. It helps me out a ton, and I shall see you in the next episode.